Going live. And we are live. Welcome, viewers. Welcome, listeners, to Religion Zero, number 49.
49.
Isn't that like a football team, the 49ers?
Oh, yeah. It's based on like the Gold Rush.
Yeah, well, that's San Francisco 49ers. Am I right? Am I getting that right?
Hold on. I just missed what you said.
Just Googled.
I just tried to mute the YouTube and it was overplaying, so I didn't hear your last sentence.
It's the San Francisco 49ers. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, because
wow.
I think it was 1849 or something like that's a big gold rush in California. So 49ers is like a term for that. And I think their logo is like a pickaxe, isn't it? Or something like that.
I'll have to check. I mean, I don't know very much about American football. I mean, I know like the Dallas Cowboys, and I knew there was something with the 49. But we made it to 49 episodes, man.
Look at that. It's almost 50. We're practically
almost
there.
50. We've had 2 casualties, but we made it this far.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see what we can do. How's your week been, my friend? How are you doing, Corey? Everything good? I happy belated birthdays are in order.
Belated birthday indeed. Birthday was on Friday. It was awesome. My Friday and Saturdays looked near identical. It started with me working on my lawn, fixing lawnmowers and mowing and all that, and then followed by hours of motorcycle shopping, then followed by a giant meat-filled dinner. And nice. I did that Friday and Saturday, so it's been good. Those are all positive man things. I think I got my man card punched 3 times
you got your
each
man
day.
Points.
Yeah. So take that. Lawn care, motorcycles, meat.
That's a good combination, man.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah. So that's been my whole weekend. And then coming up, we're gonna have like a big lunch. My family's coming over. We're grilling burgers at like noonish, my time. So that's in like 3 or 4 hours. We're going to grill some burgers, and then we're going to go to a VR arena in downtown Kansas City. It's going to be cool. So yeah, that's going to be awesome.
I'm excited for you, man. Yeah, take lots of pictures. And I did see your postings with the bike and stuff like that. That's very exciting news. We look forward to seeing more about that.
Oh yeah, bought me a chopper.
Good on you, bro. Good on you.
They might be out of style, but they're the perfect size for a giant man.
Yeah. And I mean, where you're at, is it nice to ride? Is it like very scenic and picturesque kind of thing?
Yeah. You can ride anywhere from like April to like, October, sometimes November, before like, it actually gets cold and snow comes and all that. So we have a decent like 6-month-ish riding season. So there's a lot of bikes here and bikers and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of like backcountry roads that go around lakes and woods and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that. So it's not very mountainy, but it's definitely like you can get like, there's a lot of roads that just go straight back, into the woods and all that kind of stuff. So that sounds fun. I'm excited to do that.
Definitely. I mean, just very quickly with myself, I'm also pursuing vehicular transportation. Although I'm in the
camel's just not doing it anymore, right?
No, you can't do, the Magi are very upset. But yeah, we, when before the lockdowns of, I guess, March 2020, I was actually supposed to do my driving test to get my driver's permit for the UK. Now I've driven in Trinidad for 20 plus years. So that unfortunately expired. So I can't even use that as an excuse to like rent a car or anything like that. So I made the decision, like I'm just going to get it. I never needed a license when I was in London. Didn't really need one when I was in Essex. But I knew I was coming out to Wales. The transportation out here, let's just say is kind of sparse.
Yeah.
Right. Walking. Yeah. Like, a train every half an hour, a bus every hour. So you waste a lot of time waiting for transport and stuff like that. So the plan was, I knew I was coming out to Wales. I was going to knock that out. Then COVID hit, and the theory that I did, the written exam, expired on me February just gone, like the 3rd or 4th of February, whatever it was. So I was pissed. Government has basically robbed me of £25. I'm not very happy about that. But just in line with that, the lockdowns are kind of lifting out here. I am basically going to try and bang this license out within the next month and a half. Booked the theory exam, got the app. I think that's next week. Not next. Yeah, a week after Thursday is the exam on the 14th. So wish me luck, man. I'm really looking forward to getting all that done. And as I was saying, I'll probably be car shopping and then possibly a bike. because Wales is beautiful, man. You know, it looks like something out of a movie. The hills and the green and lake districts and Snowdonia and all these beautiful sights. So it would be great to hop on a bike and just drive through the mountains on a weekend. You know, get the man points going. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Ironically, we still had like some snow up until 2 days ago, man. You know, early in the morning. What day was that? That was Friday. I went out for drinks with a couple of the local guys. It's all outdoor drinks. You can't get into the pub. And that morning it fucking snowed. Yeah. I was like, what the hell is going on, man? So by midday it was bright and sunny, and by the evening time it was pissing with rain and stuff like that. So yeah, it's still pretty cold out here, and we are in May. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I just got to watch it, you know?
Oh yeah. What kind of bike are you thinking about? Do you have a certain style or idea in your mind?
I mean, I like the chopper. It's very relaxed. I used to, well, I had like a Kawasaki, and I had what did I have before? My grandfather actually gave me something called an Indian, which is a World War II British bike.
Yeah, I actually bought my bike, even though it's a Honda. They had it used at an Indian dealership. So I got to look at all their nice, shiny new models. And boy, are they a pretty penny.
yeah. So this was a classic one. That's what I learned on. And then I had a Kawasaki. But it wasn't mine. I was kind of borrowing it from somebody. But I'll see. Like when I come out to places like this, there are obviously a lot of cars out in the UK that I would not get access to in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm kind of like, well, I should get something different, you know, something that I would have never had, you know, back in Trinidad. Trinidad has a lot of Japanese cars. You have American cars, but not as many. We had a couple European cars, again, not as many. So I'm kind of like, what is like a real cultural car that you get in the UK? And apparently it's a Ford. It's like, everybody drives Ford out here. I was so disappointed. So,
nothing exotic.
Nothing exotic is like fucking Ford Focus and Mondeo or whatever it is.
Yeah, you'd really let your UK flag fly and get like a Mini Cooper.
I mean, I don't actually like the design of the new Mini. When I was in Trinidad, I had a Rover 200. So, MG Mini, Rover, those are like the British brands that used to be very big out here. It was British Leyland was like the state company. But I don't like a Mini. A Mini is such a, I don't know. It doesn't vibe with me very well. I was actually looking at a Mustang. I was looking at a Ford Mustang.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Oh yeah. I used one, of course. I'm not buying a brand new one by any stretch, but
you should make sure it's a V8 one and not a V6 one. You know,
really? Is there a difference?
V6 one is for moms. V8 ones is for dudes. You know,
I think in the UK
that's the American stereotype.
in the UK, nobody would know that. So anything over like 1.4 liters out here is like extreme for these people, right? Because it's all taxed on the engine size. So everybody has a really small, chunky little cars. And I'm like, fuck that shit, man. I want to like take up some space, man. You know.
There you go.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah. Well, bro, let's get into today's topic. As we do know, we are a man down again. Amos, if you catch this later, you know, much respect to you. You kind of suggested this topic in terms of we did 2 episodes on the issue of postmodernism and postmodernism in the church. And we wanted to kind of address some of the things that the church is kind of doing to counteract some of that postmodernism by the esteeming of traditions. And you also mentioned like iconography and stuff like that. I wasn't too sure where you wanted to go with that topic.
Oh yeah.
Did you want to expand on that?
Yeah. So I think kind of prefacing it, we barely touched it at the end of last episode, talking about solutions to postmodernism. Because I think, you know, if everything's postmodern, then nothing works, right?
Yeah.
It's a fun thought experiment, but it's not conducive to like reality productive society. So we're talking about solutions. And I've been looking through those and seeing what other people are talking about, kind of thing. And I found some interesting theories talking about like going back to religion, not necessarily just to like everyone be Christian or Orthodox or Catholic or blah, 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 but necessarily the lifestyle of like traditional, you know, Christian traditions. And well, that's kind of an oxymoron, right? Traditional Christian traditions. Yeah.
Is it?
Is it most of it? Yeah, pretty much. But like that idea of living, of like having the rituals, you know, having songs we all sing together, having altars, having, the iconography and the art styles and things like that. And a lot of people were talking about that, and I thought it was a really interesting topic about how that, even though it seems old, and a lot of people are like, we talked about this near the beginning with Bobby. People always say, I'm not religious, I'm just spiritual. Right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about how that can kind of be a problem. And I think it kind of all comes back to that, right? Where like, why were people religious, and like, how is that actually a good benefit for society, right?
Correct.
And so we're kind of using the old to bring in the new. A lot of the common examples I'm seeing of like where that comes from is right now with postmodernism. We talk about it in the red pill space, also in the church space and all that. That a lot of, instead of like trying to make things equal, where's my hand? Okay, equal. It's now we're actually just reversing roles, right? Is what a lot of things are happening is, now women are taking males' jobs, males are taking women's jobs, but, vice versa, all the same. There's a lot more stay-at-home dads and a lot more, boss babe moms that are trying to, get their careers and stuff. And even in the art, in the culture, like how many movies have we had, like female protagonists that are better than all of the males, right? All of those kind of, that's almost like postmodern iconography, right? Where instead of trying to say we're equal, it's just saying we're going to flip everything upside down. And so the argument is going backwards is flipping it right side up again, right? And that's kind of where they go from. Do you think that jives at all, or does it sound intriguing, or heard anything about that?
I mean, we're seeing that. So in the light of the postmodern kind of ethos, we're seeing there is a massive revival that's taking place within, people of faith going back to these ancient roots. So, you may not be able to make a logical sense of some aspects of the church, and we've done some deconstruction on a lot of the traditions, but the fact that they're connected to something that is at least 2,000 years old, you could almost sense like, you're kind of continuing a lineage. You feel part of something a lot bigger than yourself. And a lot of those, as you say, a lot of those traditions are found in the old religions. So the Catholics, the Orthodox, as I say, Protestants have it to a certain degree. A lot of that's kind of been lost. But yeah, so the place where a man would be esteemed as the head of the house, if you're going to look for that, you're going to find that in the Orthodox Church, or you're going to find that, in the Catholic Church. Although I think it's being challenged more in the Catholic Church. The Orthodox are a little more stubborn, right? But if you want that like respect of being the head of the house and this kind of thing, you do find that still a very strong tradition in the Orthodox Church. Ironically, also in the Jewish Orthodox Church, right? So the Jews who, like the real Orthodox with the hats and the gray suits and the curly sideburns and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Between those two groups, those are like the least divorced groups of people. Like if you look at statistical divorce and stuff like that, Orthodox Jews and Orthodox Christians have like the lowest. It's like 5% or something really, really low like that. So, I mean, not to say anything from that information, but there seems to be a need in the human condition for that order, that structure, and, these traditions, and to feel part of a community. So I would always point it out. I was like, yeah, we came from, a Trinitarian background. So our, the one thing that wasn't good in the garden was that Adam was alone, right? Everything else was good. So God addressed that one thing. So it wasn't that Adam was, it wasn't good. He was incomplete. He couldn't have like the full expression in himself because he had nobody else to be in companionship with. So there's a lot to be said about community. Community is very much part of the human condition. And when you're part of a community and it stretches a history that lasts 1,000 years, there's something radically fulfilling, for some people, not for everybody, obviously. So yeah, I completely resonate with that. And I guess we can look at a couple of the traditions that have kind of come out from, the church and so forth. And maybe one that, kind of hits on the red pill is the idea that the man is the head of the house.
Oh yeah.
As old fashioned as that might seem. What say you? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the interesting part of that is like when you're talking about the divorce rates and like the man is the head of the house, even though a lot of people, the modern interpretation of that is like, ew, patriarchy, yada, yada.
Patriarchy, yeah.
But it patriarchy or not, it worked, right? We got here.
That's true.
Right. And I think that's part of what we need to go back to is like the reality of things, right? nobody wants a postmodernist heart surgeon to work on them. Nobody wants a postmodernist to build their house, right? You want it to be structured, and you want to use engineering, even though it might
one
be
brick
racist,
on top of the other.
course, yeah. Even though engineering's racist according to BuzzFeed, you probably want it, right? When it comes to your house and your stuff. It's just at the end of the day, the man at the head of the household and taking care of the family, being the main breadwinner and going out and building. That's how society worked. That's how we got here, right? And it's one of those kind of ironic things is like, there's a lot of criticism of capitalism or our mixed economy kind of thing. But like your life couldn't be good enough to actually think about all these postmodern things if we didn't do that, because you'd be too busy starving in your breadline, right?
Correct.
The fact that we were able to give this amount of wealth and freedom that allows you to think about why you hate it, like kind of going back to the realism, so that's I think a good preface to that of what we're talking about. One of the things I wanted to address that I think is interesting is, it's the whole I'm not religious but I'm spiritual, yada yada, and like a lot of that also involves with getting rid of rituals and trying to get rid of the metaphysical concepts and try to go down to like bare bones stuff.
Strictly historical.
Yeah. And I've talked about it before that I'm interested in that too, but I think it's from a different angle, right?
Right.
The angle they talk about is like, we don't need any rituals. We don't need any traditions. Just be yourself, be authentic. Right. And try to be, and this is kind of come from the age of enlightenment, care more about your material and yourself and what things around you, and materialism usually in this context isn't like go buy stuff. It's materialism is in like the physical matter, things you can put numbers on is what's important. And the problem with that is like 99% of our lives is still metaphysical. And how I usually explain that is like, when you're thirsty, do you want a glass of water? Right. But the problem is a glass of water is a metaphysical category, because in the most material sense, you're looking at a bunch of, burned up sand filled with dihydrogen monoxide. Right. And so when you say, I want a glass of water, you're not thinking about molecules. You're thinking about water, which is in itself, a metaphysical category. So once you start categorizing things, and that's your whole human experience, all of that is technically in the lines of like ritual and metaphysical, and not really compatible with postmodernism. Like, what a chair is, and I know what a chair is, but there's no such thing as chair, in the deconstructed real world, right? Or their version of the deconstructed world. It's a series of parts, but we know what a chair is instinctually, right? Because that's part of the human experience. But really, it's a pieces of wood and screws and glue and padding. You know what I mean? If you put all of those in a pile, it's not a chair. It's that idea, and that category is a chair, right? And so even though people want to say they want to deconstruct everything and want to live that life, you really can't. It's like,
it's impossible.
It's incompatible with the human experience. Yeah. What do you think about that? Have you heard that before? Yeah.
I have. I can't remember where I did read upon that. But you're exactly right. If you deconstruct everything, even down to language and concepts and stuff like that, you can no longer function as a community or a society for that matter. Again, taking it back to the story in the Bible of the Tower of Babel, they came together to build the Tower of God. I'm not saying this is a literal story. It's a narrative, of course. And God confused their language. And that is what, kind of separated all these different types of things. So we're seeing very much the same thing. We've constructed our own Tower of, Babel, which is civilization, right? We've extended life. We've created wealth, prosperity, innovation, technology, travel, all of these different types of things. And in many ways, the postmodernists are coming in and knocking out the very foundations that brought us to this point in the first place. And what the church has been very good at, because the church is one of the oldest institutions. Hold on, let me give this a thought. No, it is the oldest institution on the planet. Come to think of it, because even governments have fallen. The church has actually outlasted empires and civilizations, countries, all of these different types of things. And I think early on, the fathers understood that, the Bible and Christianity and all of these different types of things were going to be a type of time capsule that would last through the ages. And they started to adopt some traditions that they knew just worked. like the Protestant work ethic.
Yeah.
Right. That's yes, it actually comes out of the Orthodox Church as well. It comes out from the Bible. If a man does not work, he's not going to be able to eat. So they've actually taken some of the most efficient aspects of humanity and they've incorporated it not to the level of scripture or, the godhood, but as a holy tradition that is something that actually helps society go on. So we talked about like the father being the head of the house. You have to have more than 2 kids. They're always big on having lots of kids and stuff like that. All of these things, a man providing for his wife, mediation, innocent until proven guilty. All of these different types of things have been preserved in the lineage and the history of the church. All of that's being attacked now. So to the point that you're making is that, yeah, absolutely. That I think people are so sick of and kind of tired of modernity and, the consumerism and all of these different types of things. They're looking for meaning in a deeper sense. And that is ultimately what the church has always been in the business of. Giving people purpose, meaning. You are a son of God, you're a daughter of God. Your meaning is to know him, live in this life, experience him in whatever capacity that would be. And, do that in a community of faith where, you're accepted, you have friends and community and these other types of things. That's been lost. Even with all the technology and we're more connected than ever. People are more lonely and miserable than ever before.
Connected. Yeah.
Yeah. Connected. Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of water.
Yeah. Look at that. I hope you have some good H2O there.
Yeah. Clearly.
Yeah. And so it's interesting too, when we talk about like ritual, and I think a lot of this goes to things like art and music, right?
Yes.
The art and music changes over time usually, but most of the art and music of, traditional churches doesn't change, right?
Correct.
So there's a lot of repetition there, and there's a lot of coming togetherness, right? Where you're all in the same room, looking in the same direction, singing the same songs, right?
Correct.
And so, you could postmodern deconstruct that it's, group mentality or group think or things like that. But can group think be a good thing?
That's the question. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think this goes into like, we have narratives, and a lot of postmodernism is trying to deconstruct narratives to get to the nitty gritty, desert of the real kind of stuff. But the thing is, even though we could try to like think our way out of it, the human experience is still based on narratives, right? People learn way more through story and parable than they do reading textbooks,
Correct.
It's that idea of experiential knowledge versus like, literal book knowledge, and we have those two terms. I don't know if you guys ever talk about it in the UK at all, but we used to have book smarts and street smarts.
Sure.
Have you ever heard those two terms?
Yeah.
So book smarts, is the stereotypical nerd that's always pushing up his glasses and, trying to read all the books kind of thing. And I guess the more modern version of that is people that are obsessed and only just stare at YouTube and only look up information and only watch, podcasts like this one, like, comment, subscribe. But their whole life is just based around that, just trying to gain as much knowledge as power, knowledge, to get more brain power. They never leave their basement.
Yeah. They don't do anything with the knowledge, in other words.
Yeah. So they could have all the facts and data and statistics in their head, but they're living in their basement. They're not applying it at all, right? They have no experiential knowledge of anything they're studying. They've just read a lot of books or listened to a lot of people on Audible and YouTube that have read a lot of books, right?
Correct.
And so we have the book smarts guy, and then we have the street smarts guy, which is the guy who has, doesn't read textbooks, doesn't study a lot, but it's the guy who's actually outside doing stuff and learning from actual, failures and successes. So do you guys have similar terms for that, or have you guys used different verbiage? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it is in the UK because I'm not originally from here, but yeah, the book smart and the street smarts guy, it's something I picked up from Trinidad as well. So yeah, I completely get that. I mean, I like what you raised about, can the group think be a good thing?
Mm-hmm.
And it would appear that the church seems to think so.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we know this. We know that, the pressure of crowds, just by nature, human beings want to fit in.
Yeah.
So they have all these crazy experiments where, okay, everybody's sitting in a doctor's office when a bell rings, like everybody stands up, except the one guy who's come in. And by like the third or fourth time, he starts to stand up, and then the original people leave and new people come. and that guy is like still doing it. Like, why are you doing it? I don't know. This is just what we were doing, right? So
yeah, social conditioning, right?
Social conditioning, right? And I've seen it firsthand. Like when I would go out to ministry and other things, and I would challenge a lot of the I guess mainstream views on Christianity. You know, you could lose your salvation, the eternal hell, rapture theology, whatever. And I would come and basically destroy it and be like, look, this is whatever, this is the case, yada yada yada. And I'd watch people in the crowd, like the light would go off, like, whoa, that's so cool, that's crazy, wow, amazing, that's powerful revelation, all that good stuff. But then they go back to their friends and their peer groups and their church, and they get fixed, because now you're not a wheel in the machine, right? You're kind of bucking the trend a little bit.
Yeah.
And not many will choose to stick with the freedom and the liberty over fitting in with the crowd. That has been, it's an unfortunate experience. And in fact, even Jesus himself talked about this. The word of God will go out on different types of ground. You got stony ground, shallow ground, and good ground. So a lot of people would have that shallow ground where it would take root, but then it's snatched away. And, they kind of go back to their old ways. Not many are willing to buck the crowd for what they know to be true. I mean, I know that I've definitely been that guy because, I've lost so many churches and so many friends and fellowship over that. That doesn't bother me, but for many it does. And the church knew that. They encourage that because they know the power of the crowd is sometimes more powerful to keep people in line than, a contrary doctrine or something.
Yeah. Because we've definitely seen groupthink, used negatively, right? That's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Going with the flow. But yeah, I think it is possible to use it positively as well. Like I was just saying, even though we can outthink our way out of narratives, like intellectually in our, prefrontal cortex part of our brain, if we want to get extra, materialistic and scientific, that shuts off a lot, right? Actually, you'd be surprised how much that doesn't work and how many things can make you not think rationally, right?
Correct.
And so even though we consider ourselves rational beings, we don't use it that often. Most of our life is not based on rational stuff. Whenever
Correct.
You're in a heightened sense of joy or fear or that, your emotions pretty much always override your rationality.
Yes.
It's a lot more foundational part of the brain than the prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part is. And there's a guy, I don't know if we said it on this podcast or I've said it somewhere else, but there's Jonathan Haidt. He's been a pretty popular author the last couple of years, written a lot of books. And he wrote a book about, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was about how different people view morality kind of thing. And he realized it doesn't matter how many rational arguments you have. It's people will always double down on what they believe, right?
Yes.
Even with conflicting evidence, because at the end of the day, people care more about their gut feeling than they care about rational arguments, right? You can give people as rational argument as possible, but it doesn't matter if it's contrary to their gut feeling, right? Their instinctual feel like cringing or grossness of something, no matter how much you try to, normalize something, they do have that weird instinct. And it kind of works vice versa too, where if somebody has the opposite instinct of you, one of the common things people talk about is like the difference between freedom and security. Technically, those are both good words, but you got to realize more often than not, they are opposites, right?
Yes.
And so if someone values freedom and another person values security, they're not necessarily valuing bad things, but they're going to have opposite gut reactions in certain scenarios, right? And his analogy for it is that your rational part of your brain is a man riding an emotional elephant, right? So if everything's calm and cool and collected, then the guy can ride the elephant and kind of direct it, But if the elephant's upset and doesn't want to go where your rational mind wants to go, it will not go. Nothing a human can do riding an elephant will tell the elephant what to do if the elephant does not want to do it.
Correct.
So it's a pretty interesting thing. And I think that's where this kind of like groupthink and this ritual and this kind of thing comes in, is it's purposefully tapping into convincing the elephant instead of convincing the man, right? Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people here, if you've been in Christian churches for a while, you do feel different, and you do kind of feel that sense of unity together when you are singing songs like in an actual church setting. Or even if it's not a church setting, like if you go to a concert, right, and everybody's trying to have fun together, or you go to some kind of event and you can kind of feel everybody's kind of on the same wavelength mindset, right?
Yeah.
And you adopt that into you. So I think a lot of church tradition is trying to get into that and help make sure we're guiding us to like appropriate symbols instead of crazy symbols, right? If that makes sense.
Correct.
And so I think a lot of it through music and paintings, they're purposely trying to give out specific interpretations, right? Not just with lyrics, but also tone and, rhythm and all of those things. We all know how different it feels to hear a fast-paced, upbeat song versus a very sad, depressing, slow beat song, and vice versa, and all those things. They do implement certain feelings, right? So it is a sense of groupthink, emotional manipulation, but more often than not, it's trying to point you to a good conclusion, right?
Yes.
There's a moral to the story, even in music and art, and doesn't necessarily have to be a literal story you're telling someone, What say you, Brook?
I like what you're saying. Because I think where the church in many ways and many believers have gone wrong, and I think this is what the church is trying to circumvent in a lot of ways, is our connected humanity is more important than doctrinal differences, right? Which a lot of them don't seem to understand. A lot of believers don't seem to understand because they choose doctrine over loving your brother, right? Like loving your fellow man, right? And this is the whole story of the Good Samaritan, right? The Good Samaritan is, he goes to town. This merchant goes into town and he's beat up and he's left in the streets and he's a Samaritan, right? He's a Jew in the area. And the Levi, which is like, part of the priestly, comes by and does what is biblically correct. Because a Levi is not supposed to touch anything unclean. So he does what is scripturally correct and crosses the road. Then comes the high priest. Similarly, does the scriptural thing. The Samaritan, who's the half-breed, he's Jew and Gentile mix, he sees the man, right? He actually sees a human being in need. And his love supersedes what would be quote unquote scripturally correct. And he takes care of the man and so forth. And Jesus says, go and learn what this parable means. So our connected humanity in many ways is paramount. That is how we've built civilization, is by agreeing on, language, ethics, morals, and these other types of things, especially in modern civilization, the rule of law, right? How crazy is it? You write a piece of, some write on a piece of parchment, and that suddenly rules over the people, right? And if you do what goes against this piece of paper, breaking the law and you could be punished. I mean, it's a radical concept. But these are the things that have, we've kind of agreed upon as a society. So the church definitely adopts that, and they try to, well, I mean, at least in the Orthodox Church, they don't really like questions. So, I mean, I think they have other folly, but they unite around the humanity, right? They try to push that. And the Catholics as well unite behind the humanity, which is exactly to your point, why they push the unity of the message, the hymns, the songs. They all kind of have, but there's not a lot of independent teaching in the Orthodox and the Catholic Church, not like in the Protestants. So they kind of all believe the same thing, right? Yeah. Not as many of them are reading the Bible as in depth and so forth, but it's kind of like we're all part of this same thing. So I think that's how they try to use it, because even if we disagree scripturally, we can still get on as human beings. We could still get on as, loved by God and these other types of things. And that will push society forward. I mean, there's obviously room for disagreement and debate and all these other types of things. But the Gnostic thinking that's come into Christianity is they do like the Levi and they do like the high priest. And if you don't believe exactly like me, you're of the devil. And, if you don't believe in this proclamation and this decree and such split of the whatever church, then you're the enemy, you're the heretic, and you end up with like, the Westboro Baptists and these types of things. So I would agree with the ancient church in that respect, that they're trying to unite the humanity, and a united humanity would be a fabulous thing. We would, we transform the world, but it's very obvious that we're not there yet. We just culturally and otherwise, we're not at a unifying place where we respect each other by our humanity. We still hold knowledge and doctrine and, culture and all these other things as supreme. And I mean, yeah, it's under attack. Now, even the things that united us and brought us this far under attack. And I think the last bastion has been the church that's kind of sees themselves as a responsibility to carry these traits forward. So let's see where it goes, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For some reason, it reminded me of the concept of like when you are doing these, you know, kind of group rituals and things like that, and you're trying to portray a message, you usually want to portray it as simple and straightforward as possible. And this reminds me of something in America, at least. We have something called advanced placement classes in school. I don't know if you guys have those as well, but we call them AP classes. Yes. And it's essentially where the gifted students, right, they can learn faster or have already learned more. And basically what it is like if you're in high school, you could take calculus, which is high school calculus, or you could take AP calculus, which is like a mix of high school and college calculus, where you get into deeper concepts for the kids that are more gifted. But if you're trying to teach AP messages all of the time, you're going to lose a lot of your audience, right? And so that's why like a lot of hymns are very, like they might still have a lot of depth of knowledge and meaning that you can study. But in general, they're usually the same ones over and over again. And there's a lot of memorization involved. And there's a lot of like simplicity in the repetition of the ritual, right? Yes. Or the story, a lot of parables that Jesus talks about. It's hard for sometimes for us to get it, but it's very easy for the people of the time to get it, right? Because he used very simple analogies that would relate to the majority of the audience, right? Correct. Like, you know, farming was a huge deal and shepherding was a huge deal. So he used the idea of a shepherd a lot, right? Correct. Because a lot of people, either them or their friends or their family members are shepherds, right? Everyone pretty much knew a shepherd. That was one of the foundations of like biblical society back then. And so when you would use shepherd analogies, he wasn't doing AP calculus. He was doing, you know, the regular introductory calculus kind of thing, trying to get as many people involved as you can. And I think that is good in teaching the message. But the problem is a lot of people will see that, like, that are not Christians. And you see a lot of this with like the new atheist movement and all that kind of stuff. They go, oh, look at them. They're talking about simple, dumb stuff. All they're doing is, you know, eating bread and drinking grape juice and singing repetitive, boring songs over and over again. Look how simple these people are. Right. And so it's very interesting. There's such a big experiential difference between somebody looking outside in versus inside out. Right.
Correct.
Outside in is going to be confused or going to be mocking or things like that because they don't get it until you experience it yourself. Right. Just like we were talking about before, when you're in the church setting or you're at a rock concert or you're in a movie theater with like a midnight release of the new big movie coming out, you know, all of those have very different feelings and experiential understandings than somebody who just like watched it on Netflix when they're bored 3 years after the movie came out. Right. It's a whole different experience and understanding of the movie in that group setting. Yes. Right. So, yeah. I don't remember where I was going with that, but I'm glad I made the point.
No, I agree. I mean, you know, as going back to like what you were saying about the cultural aspect of the church, which the church has basically given up on the cultural battle. For the most part, they've kind of lost the ground on that. But you're right. In terms of once upon a time, the best music, the best poetry, you know, the best architecture, you know, the artwork, the sculptures and stuff like that was coming out from a Christian ethos. And some of the best wine, some of the best beer, the church used to be at the forefront of a lot of these things. So, I mean, yeah, we still have the iconography. I know the Orthodox kind of hold on to that. Catholics, not so much. They do more statues. Protestants, they've lost I don't think you guys, I don't think there's any sect that does iconography in Protestantism. But yeah, I mean, as you say, these were fantastic expressions. And, you know, many of them were tools of faith. So as you said, like the altar, the incense, and all of these different types of things, there was a certain amount of reverence that came to these things to help people kind of, you know, come to a God consciousness and be aware of God's presence. We've kind of thrown all of that out. Not that any of these things in and of themselves, you know, had any kind of magical power or whatever, but they've always been seen as, you know, tools to help people be aware of God's presence. So, you know, the iconography of the crucifixion, for instance, you know, that we had up not that long ago on our atonement theories, you know, yeah, you get the visualization of the angels, you know, they're capturing the blood that's coming out of the veins of Christ. You know, you have the disciples around and so forth. It's not particularly gruesome, according to the account that, you know, he was barely recognizable. But you get it from a sense of the authors that, no, this is a victorious thing that's happening at, you know, a pivotal moment that's transforming humanity. And when you can kind of look upon it in that respect and you meditate on that, yeah, you can experience, you know, God in a greater way. As you say, for the person who's on the outside looking in, is like, that's just a stupid drawing, right?
Yeah.
like how is that supposed to help me
You
in
get
any
it,
kind of
you like
capacity?
to paint Jesus, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, exactly. But as I say, Christianity's always been an experiential religion. It's always been a mystical religion, and it's very depressing that it has basically dropped to at least in the Protestant circles, where it's all about the Bible. It's all about scripture. Like, scripture has trumped everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it shouldn't. I mean, scripture is, of course, the primary source where we get all the stories and stuff like that. But the mystical side of it, and the experiential side of it, and the historical side of it, which a lot of people are probably looking for to feel connected. Mm-hmm. It's a shame that a lot of those have been lost. And we're seeing it as that has lessened the influence in the church. Society has paid the price. We've seen a lessening of all of those aspects, you know, in everyday life, in terms of, you know, authority of men. And it doesn't mean that men are better than women. It just means that men have a different role compared to women. You know, God said, you know, let us make man in our image, and he made them man and woman. So God doesn't see a difference, right? He called them both Adam at some point. It's just that the roles are different, not that one is better than the other. As I say, the Protestant work ethic, obviously that is something that's going on right now, where, you know, a lot of young people don't want to work. And that's not just a cultural failing, that's an economic failing as well, where our parents and probably grandparents were able to raise a family of 4 or 5 or more on a middle-class wage. Now, you know, you get a middle-class wage, you could, you know, just about afford your 1-bedroom apartment, and, you know, that's kind of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of decay, and a lot of that has fallen out. And of course, the moral issues that have decayed as well. So, I mean, we're not telling anybody do anything, be anything. You know, we're not saying, you know, wait till you're a virgin or whatever, anything like that. But the church understood that, yeah, you know, promiscuity, the promiscuous lifestyle, the licentious lifestyle, as much as you can do it, there's no fruit. There's nothing good that comes out of just living for pleasure. Right? I mean, that's the whole account of Solomon. Solomon, wisest man that ever lived, all the money, all the women, you know, every pleasure. And he said, look, I've tried every kind of drug, I've tried everything, and it's kind of all pointless, because all of the works and everything like that, it eventually comes to nothing. And the church has always discouraged that, because they knew there was nothing at the end of that rainbow, right? There's no pot of gold just pursuing pleasure your entire life. And all of those things, which are not just church traditions, but a human experience, has been lost outside of the church. And we're seeing that as kind of part of the societal decay.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the all things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
And especially like, and this is something a lot of people don't know. And I think I talked about this on Paul Apex Mindsets thing, but like, food and sex were very interrelated in biblical times, where one of the things we talk about, the word orgy in modern times refers to exclusively, you know, a lot of, you know, hedonistic type of sexual with multiple people.
Just quickly, we got Michael Estrada thanking you for that bit of insight about the Samaritans.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it. Where was I? Oh yeah. So yeah, the word orgy in modern terms, we usually only think of it as specifically, you know, lots of people sleeping together, pure hedonism kind of thing. But in the biblical cultural context, orgy meant any amount of hedonism together. So in biblical context, if you're going to Golden Corral and going to eat all you can eat buffets with your friends every day, that is also an orgy. Yeah. That is also an orgy, because you're eating with a bunch of people for pure hedonistic pleasure, right?
Correct.
And you know, there used to be a little term of the vomitorium.
The Roman Colosseums,
yeah. And it was supposed to mimic something they had where, like, you know, where the rich people would eat so much. They actually did have puke rooms where you would go puke and then come eat more. And that's actually what the vomitorium of the Colosseum was supposed to be referencing in their context. Because all of the people would come in together, and then all the people would come out together, you know, and it looked like a massive crowd. So that it reminded them of the rich people food vomitoriums, right? Because so many people in, so many people out, I reminded them of vomiting, vomiting people out left and right, so yeah, it's just something interesting context of that. So like when we talk about, you were just talking about promiscuity, technically we can, but it's never necessarily a net benefit to your life, right?
Correct.
It doesn't necessarily
for men or women.
Good. Yeah. But that the same thing applies, to food, to pretty much any other vice or pleasure in life, right? The idea of excess. And a lot of it to me comes to when we're talking about the Garden of Eden, everything was created good, right? Except for when Adam was alone, he was solo. But in the Garden of Eden, they had food, they had sex, they had all of these things, right? And though it all comes from creation, God creating it, right? Correct. So most things that are actually considered sin or evil are not creative. They just take a good concept and skew it, right?
Correct.
And they kind of twist it. And so that's essentially what it is. And a lot of the more common lingo, a lot of, these people that are studying symbolism and iconography, all that stuff, they're using the term inverted, right? Where you have upside down pyramids, obviously we're talking about that. We're now, we're seeing a resurgence of like the female Mary Sue superhero that's better than everyone and doesn't have to try, and it's kind of this inverted caricature of what the hero's journey actually was. Most of the hero's journey is failing and learning, and then eventually becoming, the king at the end, so to speak, or the winner. But this one is, I'm good at everything all the time. And it's this weird clown show mirror, circus mirror image of what they think it is, right? So they would consider that, a twisting or an inversion of what's normal. And there's a reason that every time they make those movies, they don't make much money because people don't want to see it because they're there for the story, not the story you're forcing down our throat, the inversion, right? So sometimes a lot of people do have morbid curiosity, but in general, the morbid curiosity movies will never make as much as like the genuine stories that people relate to, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Have you actually seen any of these movies?
Oh yeah, I have. I have.
Oh, yeah.
There's a guy that I watch on YouTube a lot called Filmento, and he does like critiques of these films. And he did one on the recent Charlie's Angels. I wasn't gonna watch that, but
no.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Star Wars trilogy. I saw what was another one? The Charlie's Angels was a big one. The Ghostbusters remake 2016.
Oh yeah.
What was
Captain
another
Marvel
one?
was a huge one.
Captain Marvel was a big one. I saw Wonder Woman, the second one, 1984. The first one was fine. And yeah, it's unrelatable. I mean, the whole point of the story, and this goes back to myths and legends, and you hear the stories of Hercules and the quest that he would go on, or it was always getting harder. He'd like build up to something bigger and bigger and bigger challenges, and that's how he grew. The idea of growing and the idea of actually putting in the work, again, very, very Christian ethics, right? This is the ethos of Christianity, is that you're growing into your relationship with God. You're growing into, your purpose in life. I was a child at one point and I put away my childish things when I became a man. And, there's a growth to the whole human experience. But the storylines that you're talking about is no instantaneous here now.
Yeah,
you got it all, right?
Yeah,
and it speaks to the narcissism and the nepotism of the generation. Like, we want it now, we want it all. We don't want to wait. We got to do all of these different types of things. And I mean, it's obviously showing, especially in the realms of Twitter and these other places. But yeah, it's a failing because nobody wants to do the work anymore. Right? There's no honor anymore in like working a McDonald's job. If you're not a rapper with Lamborghinis and like bitches and hoes everywhere and a couple lines of coke at the age of 21, you failed at life. So it's all of this nonsense, this noise that's basically being pushed. I think for the most part, people are rejecting it, but the problem is that they don't really know where to go to finances for it. And I say, yeah, that's what the church was for. The church hasn't really taken the opportunity to really address this need in society. I wish they would, right? I really wish they'd like actually do some campaigning, do some marketing, and kind of like speak to people about these things. The only ones that are doing it are like the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses. They still put their ads out. They still try to reach people and come to your door and throw a little pamphlet through the mail and stuff. But the Protestants aren't doing it. You know, the Catholics aren't doing it. The Orthodox, I wish they would do it. But yeah, we are supposed to be the answer to that stuff. And I think they kind of dropped the ball in many ways. They're waiting for everybody to walk through the door instead of actually doing what Jesus said, which was like, go to the lost, like get out the door, like go, get out, you know? Exactly. I mean, have you, what kind of evangelism have you, I've been out of this realm for a long time. The Orthodox don't really evangelize much, but I mean, have you seen any of this kind of outreach or anything like that?
Yes and no. I would say that there's some evangelism, but is it efficient evangelism? Right.
Yeah.
And what are you evangelizing about? Are you evangelizing about how diverse and socially woke your church is, or are you
how inclusive it is?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me a lot of like when we come down to the roots of like what we're doing. There's a quote from some, theologian, and I'm bad with names, so I don't know who it is, but it said, in the big things, unity, in the small things, diversity, but in all things, charity. Right. And I think I might have quoted it before way back then, and maybe I knew the guy's name then, but
yeah, I think it's Salvation Army guy. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah.
William Booth.
Yeah. And so when I think of the concept of evangelism, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about, the difference between, teaching math and AP math, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are trying to do the AP math, their super cool niche version of like, oh, we do this part better than everyone else, but they're not talking about the big topics that can be relevant to them, right? You're trying to kind of force people or, sledgehammer them into exactly your ideology and your weird nuances, but that's not what it's for, right? I think of also Apostle Paul, he's coming up a lot. To the Jews, I became a Jew, to the Gentiles became a Gentile, became all things to all men that I might save some. And that's talking about, to me, that second point of that quote is in the small things, diversity. You got to learn like what is essential to your message and what is not essential to your message. Right.
Correct.
There was a part in Acts where he was talking to the Greeks and they had a sculpture to the unknown God. Yes. And he used that as part of his sermon. Hey, the unknown God is the God of what we're talking about, and he's above all of these others. So let me teach you about that unknown God you have a sculpture to, right?
Correct.
And so he was able to still try to give the gospel root message, that unifying part, so that they can relate, but he was using it in their terms, and he was using their foundations to show their truths, so to speak. Hey, yeah. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Good to see you. When are you moving to Kansas City, huh? That's still on the table, Tom.
Well, we'll have it while we open for questions, and we'll see.
Oh yeah.
But I love what you're saying, which is the unity and diversity, right? It's the reason you have, in terms of iconography, for instance. I remember having a discussion with one of the Eastern Orthodox guys, and I realized these people are not always on top of things.
Yeah.
And anyway, I said, there are churches in Africa, some of the Eastern Orthodox and Syrian Orthodox and Syriac Orthodox and Ethiopian Orthodox, where the Jesus icons are black, right? And I mean, these are like hundreds of years old, and they put it, and he had an issue with it, right? Just like if you go to Asia and you will get iconography of like Japanese looking Jesus, right? You will get, you go to India, he looks Indian. So anyway, so he kind of had a issue with that whole thing. And he was saying, if you start doing this, it's not very long until, people start doing iconography where God is basically an animal. And I said, well, isn't Jesus the Lamb of God? Like, hasn't this already been done in the Orthodox Church? We got like hundreds of lambs being crucified. Like, what is really your objection here? And anyway, that's a guy who obviously couldn't see the forest for the trees. But that goes to your point. The unity is Christ. What he looks like doesn't really matter, right? He's united with humanity. He's the vicarious representative of all. So if they want to depict him as, and the whole point of iconography is to feel your connection to God. And if in doing so, you want an icon that looks closer to yourself, the church should be endorsing that, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying go crazy, right? Don't like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to say anything, but you get my point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about the innate message that you're putting, the narrative. It doesn't necessarily care what the character looks like, right? It's the ideas of what's going on. Kind of reminds me of that quote is like, small-minded people talk about people, normal-minded people talk about events, and high-minded people talk about ideas, right?
Yes.
So this whole postmodernism versus traditional, kind of thing is all about idea battles, right? So if you get caught up in like specific events that happen, or you get caught up in specific people involved, you know what I mean? And the gossip of he said that, she said that, you're missing the point, right? This is an ideas battle. And when we're talking about this, and we're talking about evangelism, we're talking about iconography and paintings and music, the idea is what's supreme. That's what you got to look for. What is the idea and the symbol and the moral of the story they're trying to portray? I don't care if it's a black or white lead actor, right?
Correct.
That's only relevant to the audience they're trying to hit. Those are those malleable things, like Paul was saying, Jews to the Jews, Gentile to the Gentiles. Those are the malleable things. In order to get that idea needs to stay the same. And you can put it in any different context you want. One of the common things I know a lot of people do is they modernize Jesus's parables, right?
Right.
And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It just depends if they meet the idea of the message, right?
Right.
One of the common ones I hear is the parable of the prodigal son, who gets his inheritance early and blows it on a bunch of dumb stuff, or, wastes his spending. And then he's so dead broke, now he hangs out with pigs and eats pig food, right? And then he eventually comes back to the father, and the father welcomes him, that whole story. And the common modern revisionist of that is, it's a guy who gets his money from his dad and then goes to Vegas and gambles it all and buys some strippers, and buys some drugs and all that stuff. But he loses it all at the casino. And now he's, the homeless guy under the bridge. And then eventually realizes, okay, I need to go back to my dad that was more stable, kind of thing, right? So that one, it's kind of the same message.
It could work, yeah.
It's a little bit more relevant to people talking about it, because if or if we talk about Corinth, we know Corinth, we call that the Las Vegas of, the New Testament, because Corinthians was out there, and like all of the hedonism, all of the whatever you want, lots of pagan prostitute temples, lots of this, lots of that. And it was kind of the more Vegas that we use of that time, right? And so we're malleabling in the small stuff, the people and the events, but it's the same. We're still trying to portray the same idea, the big thing, right?
Correct.
So
I agree. I love the idea, and I think that's what Christianity was kind of founded on. We forget this came from a Jewish, history. It came from a Jewish background and a Jewish culture. But yeah, the ideas and so forth are meant to transcend, the Judaism and all these other things, which is why there's a separation. We're not Jews, right? We're not part of Judaism. But again, it speaks to all of humanity, right? And I think that has been the key point. Mm-hmm. And the early church understood that. If you read like the early fathers, Cyril, Basil, Epicurus, and these others, they understood that this was a universal message. And they knew that this, they believed that the church was going to exist at the time when Christ returned, whenever that is, if that's happened already, whatever your position on the whole matter is. And they thought long term. So a lot of the traditions and other things that have come in, it's as I say, it's one of the greatest time capsules that humanity has. If you go to a Catholic church or you go to an Orthodox church, you will be witnessing things that have been taking place for over 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. The burning of incense, the sign of the cross, I mean, the research, I'm not a big into the different traditions, but the sign of the cross, apparently the early church did the sign of the cross. Mm-hmm. And the Catholics and the Orthodox are fighting over whether you go to the left first or the right first. And, they went to war over such things, right?
Yeah.
Then you get new additions, as you say, we get the Protestants that have come in and Sola Scriptura and all these, but it is such a rich history. And even if you were to look at it from that angle, mm-hmm. just the historical side of it, there's so much that the person could glean from that in terms of the human experience throughout centuries. And all of that mystique is gone. And now, as you say, on the outside looking in, people just think, this ancient organization, it's irrelevant, it's pointless. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they were saying this exact same things at the fall of Rome, back in the day. It was 1,000 years ago. And the church outlived the fall of Rome, man. It's still here,
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think here's a part, though. This is funny because I was talking about this a bit with my stepdad, because we had a longish drive to go get the motorcycle
Yeah.
It was about, by the way, we bought the motorcycle. It was about 110 miles away. It was a 2-hour drive one way.
Nice.
And so we drove there, looked at all that kind of stuff. But on the way there, we were just chatting. And I was bringing up the concept we were talking about today. I was talking to him yesterday, and he brought up an interesting caveat, and I want to hear your take on it. He's like,
sure.
Okay, yeah, narrative's this. We talked about a lot of what we were talking about here, of what I was going to say. And he's like, what about when Paul says, talks about the story of like those people were scared of the ritual of eating burned foods to other idols. And Paul said, don't worry about it. Right.
Correct.
So how does that fit in? Is that Paul trying to destroy the narrative of what was useful for them or what?
I mean, the verse in question. Yeah. So it's like some honor the moon, some, abstain from meat, and drink, he said, which is alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And he's basically surmising, how do I say this? He espoused that all of those traditions that the Jews and others think is giving them spiritual brownie points are meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of said, look, you don't have any confidence in the flesh. If anybody should have confidence in the flesh, it should be me, right? Circumcised on the 7th day, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Pharisee of Pharisees, concerning the law blameless, and all these different types of things. And he says, I count all of that as horseshit. And the word there is not dung, it's actually skubala, which is shit. It's like literal.
It's the strong poop. Yeah.
It's the strong word that, of course, the translators fought over. But it's shit. He basically is making a point that all of that supposed spiritual lineage that he thought was important, it means absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making the same point about all of these traditions. So the new moons and, abstaining from alcohol, meat offered to idols and all these things. People think by avoiding these things or abstaining these things or like bringing their flesh under discipline or whatever the concept is, gives them some kind of spiritual brownie points. And that's what he's addressing. It's like, no. It is all a work of grace. It is all the work of Christ. The faith that you believed in the beginning is the faith that's going to see you out. That is what grows you. The seed has everything it needs in itself. You really don't have any say. So your fasting is really not doing anything for you in terms of adding brownie points. Abstaining from alcohol isn't really doing anything for you. This festival and that festival aren't really doing anything for you spiritually. It might do something for you emotionally, but it has no spiritual benefit to the end of the day. So that's always kind of how I've addressed it. Oh, Conk, we've just lost you, bro. I don't know if I don't know what's happened there. I'm gonna have to pull him up on. Hopefully his power has not come out. So guys, we're just gonna wait a bit here. Hopefully Conk will be joining us back. I'm gonna open it up for questions. If anybody wants to jump in. Let me see. Is he typing? All right, guys. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. If anybody wants to jump in, hopefully Conk will jump back on before we wrap up. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully he didn't lose power. That's always the issue with these different types of things. But anybody out there, yeah, I'm hoping you guys are getting something. I was gonna ask Conk about if he's ever used an icon or been inspired by with a God experience from a piece of music, an icon, or any of these different, or even taking communion. Maybe you guys have had some of that experience. Maybe you come on and share a little bit about an icon that maybe has helped you out. That'd be pretty cool. Hey, got Tom. What's happening, bro?
What's up, brother Brook? How are you?
I'm all right. Our boy is gone, man. I don't know what's going on. Kong we lost his signal.
You must have went for a bike ride, man.
What's going on, my man? How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, brother. I just got into Denver, Colorado.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I passed Kansas City. It's about 10 hours to the east. I might be going back because someone I met on a dating app can get me a good job out there, I think.
Welcome back, Honk. Yeah, my Chrome just said unexpected error and crashed, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I hate when that happens, man.
I had to go find the link again and try to get back in, but
that's all right. Tom is just saying he might be passing back in your area soon.
Awesome.
Someone I met on a dating app can get me a job, a really good job there, I think.
Oh yeah, that'd be sick. You know what field it's in?
Insurance.
Ooh. It's miserable, but it pays bills.
It pays really well. Yeah.
Yes. I've had my insurance license for 2 years, and but the pay sounds really good, so I might end up doing it.
Yeah, my cousin, she works in State Farm in downtown Kansas City, and she says it's miserable, but she's making decent money. So, yeah, there's definitely a market for it still.
It was funny meeting someone on a dating app because I was at your brother's, so I met CONK's brother, and he's a lot cooler than CONK makes him out to be.
Oh no.
But
trust me, you'll hate it. You'll hate him if you hear
eventually.
Hang out with him too many times. Yeah.
But yeah, somebody in the group had entered the group because they met a woman on a dating app, and he ended up giving me an edible.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
I love these youth groups. Where do I go?
It felt great. I never actually had an edible before that. It was great.
Oh,
it's a different trip. It definitely, and it lasts a lot longer too.
Yeah, it felt like healing, like rejuvenating. Okay, so let me get to a question. So like what appeals to me about Christianity and the red pill is like there's this bite to it. It has an edge, and not just to be edgy, but because it talks about these hard truths of reality. And the problem I have with postmodernism is that it like softens it up too much, and it's just like, this isn't really describing reality anymore. This is describing, our first world problem existence, where like, those aren't real problems. And so that's why you're seeing it retreat, because it doesn't have that bite anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would say, I think we talked about one of the other shows about postmodernism, but when you get the critical theory and you get the postmodernism, when you bring it all down, it always just goes, that's just my experience, right? You're making it so individualist. It's weird because it's a collectivism based on extreme subjective individualism, right? Where when you have everything that's, it's just only my experience and no one else can feel the way I feel because it's only my experience, then you don't have empathy. Then you don't have any real connection, right? And when you have empathy and you have connection, and what we were just talking about near the beginning of the show of like groupthink or that group mentality, then you have those shared actual connections of human experience, right? But if you're breaking it down so subjectively, then it's weak because it's just one person feeling one thing and they're declaring no one else can feel this way. Therefore, they're cutting it off at the heels and not letting it go, right? You're not able to actually relate or empathize with other people and connect. So, yeah.
I mean, it's even worse than that. If you have an experience that goes counter to their narrative, you're not even allowed to have your own experience.
Yeah, your experience is wrong, and
your experience is wrong because of whatever, you're the wrong color or whatever the case is. So there's no meaningful dialogue or no meaningful fruit that would come out of that position. And hopefully, I think people are waking up to it because it's really in everybody's face. It's all over the media. It's everywhere. I'm just hoping people kind of wake up and start to push back on a lot of that stuff. And I wish the church would wake up and start pushing back on a lot of that stuff, because they're really not really taking up the mantle as they probably should in that respect,
Mm-hmm. And I think also this is why Jordan Peterson got so big so fast, right? Because he was filling that hole that everybody was kind of feeling in the back of the mind, right?
Correct.
Because the more we're getting into this postmodernism and subjective stuff, like that automatically destroys your sense of meaning and purpose, right? For everyone is their own little isolated special experience, as long as it's, doctrinal according to whoever's, in academia at the time. That dissolves all meaning, right? If you're deconstructing everything to base reality, then there's no meaning behind it. There's no shared meaning. And, Jordan Peterson, came out, started talking about meaning, started talking about, imagery and symbolism, and started talking about how to have purposeful lives, and now he's Red Skull now to them. because he's giving purpose to people in a group, therefore Hitler for some reason, right?
Right. What's really nice to me about the doctrine of hell, besides being hell, is that it is so universal, and it's one of those things that has bite. It gives you this sense of urgency, of importance, and it goes across racial boundaries. Whereas these days, people do have a sense of urgency for like BLM, but it's just like that's not universal, and it's clearly just this manipulated thing that's being used to push agendas through. It's not really for the better of humanity in the same way. It's like this universal concern of hell caused the missionaries to build hospitals, to feed the poor, to do all these things as all long about ways of saving their physical bodies, to as well also save their eternal souls. And that's what really motivated them to do all those good works of charity. And but if you don't want to offend people with hell, then then there's no motivation to do that. Just like men aren't motivated without beautiful women, without everything we talked about in Red Pill. I think Christianity without hell, I struggle to find that motivation.
I mean, that's a much bigger discussion. But I agree with you that fair is a fantastic motivator. But
yeah, man,
we have Heather waiting in the background, Tom. So I gotta let you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Tom.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on. We got Heather. What's going on?
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Coming through loud and clear.
Great. First, I'd like to say to Brook that I do not own a Roomba, but after seeing his post on Facebook, I'm thinking I should buy one, because since CONK is so convinced that I'm a bot, I think that the Roomba would not attack me as it did in his post.
Yeah, you're on the same team, so that's
yeah.
good.
I was like, oh, so I can get one.
Yeah.
To help with my
brilliant.
The thing, based on the question that Brook posed about what iconography type things like maybe helped us, one of the things I found helpful was the simplicity of certain things. The Lord's Prayer is, if you go through it line by line, saying it in your heart, it really can be impactful. And it has changed it. I mean, this is 20 some odd years ago that I went through this, but I prayed it thinking of someone, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. It's like, how can I ask for forgiveness if I'm not willing to also forgive? And it was really impactful. And I remember it was dealing with someone at work who I had a lot of difficulty with this person. Her lifestyle was very different from mine. She had her thinking was way different from mine, we'll just say, and her lifestyle. And once I did that, and then I started to change the way I was with her at work, the way I engaged with her, and I was more tolerant and everything. And she had said to someone that she was like, what happened with Heather? She's suddenly not being so prudish or shrew-like or whatever. But it was just like, I was judging her lifestyle, and, and that wasn't for me to be judging. And so that was really good. And other prayers and things like that you just, you may not have them memorized, but you read them out of the book. I know that Lutherans get a bad rap for some things, but honestly, I really enjoyed when I would be in that environment and doing those readings, because it's like, it kept my focus by reading it and hearing it being read aloud and everything, it really kept my focus on what was going on in the service. It wasn't like a free floating mind experience. And, you know, sometimes in your life, you need that guidance and that structure. And I found it very helpful to be able to experience that. And that's all I wanted to share. I didn't want to get into too much more. So,
Fantastic.
Thank you.
But yeah, the Lord's Prayer is a very good example of what we're talking about here, right? It has a point to it, right? It's not repeating for repeating's sake, you know? It can feel like that at times, you know, if people are going through the motions, ritual for ritual's sake, but you know, there's a meaning into it. And the more you repeat it and the more you actually look into it, you know, that's where you kind of get those mindset changes and those new understandings, epiphany kind of thing. But if you're looking at it from the outside in, you're like, oh, just because you're repeating a bunch of things doesn't mean you're saved. That's dumb, blah, 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 blah. That's not the point, right?
Just very quickly, this is the meme that Heather is talking about the robot vacuum. So future viewers, anybody who wants to know the context. So robot vacuum eats sleeping woman's hair. And then this below is like the Terminator, so it begins.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
Why was she sleeping on the floor?
That's why was she sleeping on the floor? That's the whole
Was she
point.
passed out? You know, don't let your Roomba run if you're drinking.
That's it.
You know, there should be like a checklist, you know, the thing that they have, you know, when they say, you know, don't stick a fork in the toaster and on the new toaster box, you know, then all these different things. It's like the I don't want to, it's like the stupid people checklist,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, like I see warnings on things and I'm like, why is this a warning? Don't people know that?
Yeah.
There's always a story. There's always a story.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of a meme story I saw where it was talking about, I'm trying to get more active and keep myself on my toes. So I bought a Roomba and I'm letting it go 24/7 and I glued steak knives to it. So, you know, always going to be on your feet, you know, be more alert, get moving.
Use it as a security type thing for somebody who comes in, you know, as soon as the door opens.
Yeah. I wonder if you can give it a gun, you know, intruder.
I don't know. It seems like as soon as I'm done running the sweeper or sweeping the floor with either a broom or with the vacuum, it's like as soon as I put the stuff away, I'm like, how did that dirt get there? Like, right.
There's always more.
Immediately.
There's always like, more. Yes.
My dog knocks his treat toy around, so there's stuff all over the place. It just never ends. So.
But Heather, to the point of like iconography and traditions, I love those hymn books and the prayer books. Some of them, you know, as I say, the Lord's Prayer is over 2,000 years old, and you know, you're really connect with something, you know, that goes back, you know, generations. You know, probably our grandparents and parents before them, and so on. You know, you're doing something that really connects you with your humanity in some parts. So yeah, I think. We don't give enough credit to some of those traditions, and I keep saying those aren't magic pills, right? There's nothing magical in the words themselves, but they do help us connect to that heritage, to the divine, you know, almost as a form of meditation sometimes. And it's been sad that the church has devalued a lot of those different types of things. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
There was a lot of memorization that I practiced when I was a child in Sunday school. Yeah. And there was that song, Father Abraham.
Okay.
He had many sons.
Yeah. Many sons had Father Abraham. And then you would be shouting off all their names and stuff like that. And like there was a sing-songy way to do the books of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel, blah, 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 blah. And that's how you went through the major prophets, the minor prophets, the whole thing. And it's like, it's in my head.
It's still there.
Some 40, 45 years later.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
You know, I'm a 5-year-old kid, like doing this stuff. But it's like, it's pretty funny because I wanted to look up something in the Bible. And it's kind of like when you run the alphabet through your head, because especially as you get older, you sometimes have to do that. And I would be running those little songs through my head from way back as I'm like flicking through. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool I mean, it has a purpose.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what that purpose is for each person, who knows? But for me, I find it calming, stabilizing. Yes. You know, I'm very big, you know, I'm one of those who's like big on what was it, freedom or stability?
Security. Yeah.
Security. I'm all security all the time.
Most women are, yeah. Most women.
You know,
yeah.
My husband, like monthly, will be like, blah, 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 all the bills are paid for, blah, 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 blah. Like he runs down this list because I have financial security issues from back in my childhood of not having stuff, of, you know, dad being out of work, that kind of, you know what I mean? It was scary stuff. And so he like runs down this list for me and I'm like, la, 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 la. So I get to then go about my life feeling a sense of freedom, yes, that I'm not bogged down by that issue that causes me anxiety. So it's, you know, I get what you were saying at the beginning, that you have either one or the other, but at the same time, I get freedom from stability. And I get, not everybody else, you know, but for me, I feel freer because I'm not bogged down by the stuff in my head. Yeah. And, you know, same with like practicing certain things, you know, having my daily checklist of things to do for my chores, having various things. When I'm able to do things a certain way, you know, bless Jordan Peterson, you know, make your bed, for heaven's sakes. It's, you know, it's a lovely thing. But when you have those things that you do, it helps you to be able to be free for other things. I mean, in my opinion, everybody has something.
Yeah. And I mean, that is kind of the evolutionary drive of, you know, it's one of the differences of male and female is the amount of risk association that we're willing to input, right? And that's why women in general kind of gravitate towards security versus men who are usually, not always, but usually more towards freedom kind of thing. And it's really, a lot of it's just based on evolutionary drives. You know, you're like, if you're a mom, usually your priority is to make sure your kids don't die, right? So you care a lot about the house they're living in, the bed they have, the food they have, you know, what they're doing. And I mean, and its most obvious example is right now, you know, I just bought a motorcycle and all the women in my family are freaking out mad, and all the other guys are like, cool, high five. You know what I mean? Because they're automatically scared your mindset. Oh no, he's going to die. That's their first thought, right? I got to fix this. I got to control the situation. I got to encourage him to, you know, wear 5 helmets and install an airbag and create the world's first, you know, motorcycle seatbelt or something weird like that, right? Because they're very security minded, right?
That's the thing that's hard though, because it's like, you know, when my husband wants to do something that is out of the norm for him, which I mean, he works all the time. So it's like, you know, when he's not working, he's like passed out asleep on the sofa, God bless him. But he, like, if he does something that's out of the norm or seems a bit like if I get like that, like little trigger, like, oh,
yeah,
I have to stop and say, let him be. Just let him be. Yeah. You know, for heaven's sakes, whatever brings him calm, peace, or whatever in that 5 minutes that he's able to do whatever he's doing, just leave him alone. If he wants to listen to some weird program on the TV that seems strange or whatever, and play a video game on the computer while he's taking a break just let him be. Yeah. And that's a thing that I wish I had more experience with my nephews, to be able to just let them be with things, because the households they're in are all like, oh no, you can't play football, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then they're turning them into like these slugs.
Yeah.
who sit around and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, maybe if you had just gotten out of their way, you know, let kids be who they're going to be. Don't try to always direct things. And that's really tough.
Yeah.
So I know that's off. Here I went off on a tangent.
A bit of a yeah.
This was what happens when you keep me on too long.
No, it's all good. I think
Always
it's right
good
on
to have you,
topic. I could always wrap it in. But.
Yeah. We can spin it. That's fine. Good to see you, Heather. Have a good evening.
Take care, guys.
Yeah,
have a great week.
You too.
Take care. Fantastic. Yeah, just before you got knocked off, I was talking about people having experiences with iconography and other things like that. And I asked people, like, anybody want to share where you've said a prayer or looked at an icon or a piece of art or music and really felt like connected to the divine and stuff like that. So have you experienced anything like
that? Well, if you could put it on the zoomed out setting on the thing, you could see my one true iconography right here. These are the two things in my life that I meditate on daily is gorillas and VR, right?
Harambe and VR.
Harambe iconography, I recommend that to everyone.
Clearly.
But I do have these here for a reason, right? These do have innate, even though it's funny and it's memey and all the people like that, to me, this does have innate symbolism to me, because I think a lot about, we talked about before with Uncle Ted, we've had a couple of those discussions, but like human nature and technology is probably the biggest thing I study all of the time. And it's kind of this duality that kind of reminds me of things all the time. But it just happens to also be funny and culturally relevant, right? Harambe never dies in our hearts.
Yes.
And so to me, like, even though these just seem like two random set pieces, these matter to me, right? These are symbols I picked on purpose to put behind my camera, right? And so I don't know if that applies or if that counts. It's not necessarily spiritual or religious, but I consider these my art, my iconography of things I contemplate on, pretty much daily. Is the relationship between human nature and technology is such a big deal to me. You know what I mean? Because I can feel those two sides in me all of the time. Like, I want the cool newest tech gadgets, and all these cool new shiny things. But I also got to realize, like, juxtaposing that at the end of the day, I'm literally just a giant bald gorilla, right? You know what I mean? And how those interact. And like, we have our bestial nature and we have our, our prefrontal cortex, analytical, rational nature, right? And which is where a lot of science and technology comes from, is, just look at the numbers, try to be as objective as possible. But that's not how humans work. If you're looking at the monkey side, right? At the end of the day, we still have monkey brains trying to figure out rationality and how those intermingle. So I could talk about that for hours, but so yeah, this is my iconography up here. That's
pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I think for me, like, I do enjoy going to the museums.
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy visiting old churches, just because, I put my hand on the door and I just realized, how many weddings, how many funerals, how many baptisms have come through here in, how many hundreds of years. And it's very cathartic. It's very therapeutic. So yeah, I do enjoy that kind of stuff. And religious artwork is beautiful. Say what you want about it. Some of it is just breathtakingly stunning. So, people really try to do art for the glory of God, and you can see they poured their heart and soul into a lot of it. So yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I think we've kind of, run the gauntlet. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, kind of final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Ooh, let's say, yep. I think to me, like the scripture of, be a Jew to the Jews, Gentile to Gentiles, all things, all men. That's been like a foundational verse for me ever since I came back to Christianity when I was like in college, right? Mm-hmm. We told that story near the very beginning. Like, I was Christian, then I was atheist for a while, and then I came back to being Christian after I read the Bible for myself, trying to debate Mormons for sport, right?
Yes.
But ever since then, that verse has always latched on to me, right? And it's interesting because it's its own little narrative and something I repeat and I look up a lot, and I look up other people's Bible commentaries and stuff on it. And like, to me, that verse always gravitates me. But it's funny because not only is that my own little personal, like, ritual narrative, meaning of the story that I like to study, but that in itself is about meanings of the story. So Yeah, I mean, just find out, just final thoughts to everybody, maybe like practical advices, like literally go down and find out what you like and why you like it, right? That's a very interesting thing. And I think instead of thinking about the people in it or the event in it, what were the ideas in it, right? When we were talking about those different, hierarchies of how high-minded you're thinking about this, try to get to the ideas and the meanings of the stories of everything around you that you put there, right? Because most people, like we were just saying, most people would say, oh, funny Harambe meme. But no, there's a reason I like this. You know what I mean? It's not just for the lulz, as they say. And I think just going through that. And another example is I would also, if you want to have any kind of power in your evangelism or influence, even if you don't like it, still follow the trends. See what's trending on Twitter. See what the biggest movie of the week is, and watch those and engage with those, because that's now giving you that reception so that you can now, help relate what you want to talk about to your audience, right? So, if the big movie of the week was the new Mortal Kombat, right? It's important to watch that, even if you don't like Mortal Kombat, which is dumb. That's not even, there's not real humans, but everyone likes Mortal Kombat. Don't lie to me about that. But but watching that and being able to engage in that discussion, not just because you like the movie or didn't like the movie, but why, right? Trying to get to that why. And that's what all narratives are based on, is the why, right? Science and technology can do the who, what, when, where, but only the human experience can try to put out a why, right?
Correct.
So that's my final thoughts.
Yeah, excellent. Just for me, yeah, I kind of echo what you're saying there, and it's ironic because you're kind of suggesting that the church adopt more external culture when we did an entire thing saying how that was a problem as well.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah,
Christian culture.
So I used to call this two terms. There's monk mode, and not the red pill monk mode, but there's monk mode and there's mining mode, like being a miner, being a monk or a miner. So you can either be a monk and abstain from all worldly influence, or you can be a miner and dig through the dirt to try to find gold nuggets. Right. Yeah. And so
I get the distinct. That's good though. No, I think God is big. God is, he is in everything and in everyone. Beauty is of him. The beauty of an orchestra, art. In fact, that was the distinction of what separated the immature Corinthians from the mature, is that they had to be spoon-fed, the story of Christ and stuff like that. The mature understand the righteousness of God and that he is everything. So the whole Christian culture discussion is that they have to go and stamp Jesus on a play or a movie or something, so it's Christian. But a Christian could, a mature Christian would look at a piece of art and see the beauty of it and be like, wow, that is, the glory of God has come upon this. God has inspired this person. And they don't need it spelled out for them, right? They can see it in the unity of people. They can see it even at a sporting event. And I remember being at a very massive concert, and I could feel the presence of God, even though what was going on in the concert wasn't particularly very godly, but just the unity of the people. That was an expression of God. And I think, I completely agree with you. Go and find what you like. A lot of the desires that God has for your life tend to be the things that you like, right? It's kind of almost your destiny is kind of linked to something that you're passionate about. We've done very little to encourage passion. We've done very little to encourage, outside of the church and a lot of these places. Go and live your life, man. Trust the Christ in you, and you'll find the expression that works for you. I love it. I love it. So next week, I guess we're on your channel.
Yep, I guess so. Yep.
Fantastic, guys. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I think we had about 8 people in there. We've hit 8 likes. Next week, we're on CONK's channel. Of course, all of the links are below. Also, in about 30 minutes, I'm going to be interviewing my friend Sean Finch from London. He's running for the London Assembly. That's going to be in 30 minutes. He and I are going to have a little chat. Hopefully I'll get it done before delivery arrives, if you guys want to stick around on this channel for that. So until then, everybody, we will see you all